you've auditioned people now for the episodes of Shameless that you directed and Animal Kingdom and the thing you did for the New York Times.
Modern Love for Amazon.
Modern Love for Amazon. And obviously for Angeline. And can't you tell usually in the first 20 seconds if you're interested or if you're not, and then you can see more maybe?
I think that's the part of it that's been very liberating for me as an actor to my acting. It's been liberating to finally be on the other side, because you realize how little it actually has to do with the actual work that you do. Your work can be stellar. It can be a 10, but if there's not that, if there's either, that just subliminal texture that somebody has or doesn't have when they walk in, it can lead you to just immediately want them or kind of immediately discount them in your head. So
for that project.
Exactly. But I also think that, we always remember people that come in and knock it out of the park and actively go and look back in the script if they're not right for the character, is like, what else could we put them in? If they're so great, is there even a female role that we can like switch it and make it a dude or make it a female and reconceive of things? And I have just a mental list of actors that I've liked that I haven't gotten to cast. And it's so heartbreaking too, because you just want to get a shot to win as the actor. Yeah. And I know that. But I also think that I really do believe that you find the projects that are right for you. And I know, we've prepped a bunch of auditions and screen tests that I also haven't gotten. And most of them are just like, ooh, bullet dodged.
But they hurt at the time. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
You've said so many times, how many times am I going to hear I was the best one they saw and then they give it to somebody else?
Yeah.
If I'm the best one, just give me the part.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just actually saw a movie that we prepped that went to somebody else. And they're like, it would have been very different with you in it. And I'll tell you later what one it is.
I'm dying to know what it is. You can tell me what it is. I don't care.
It was American Made, the Tom Cruise movie.
What's that?
The guy, the pilot who got involved with drug lords and the CIA.
God, yeah. And who plays the wife in that? Who got the part?
I don't know who it is. Someone nice, a blonde, playing it Southern. It would have been very different.
It's just totally different. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the director might have had it in their mind that they wanted somebody that was just inherently softer or inherently.
I think so.
Whatever. So. And.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
but you're right. It's like a gut punch when you don't get it.
Yeah.
And even if they don't, sometimes they don't even give you a reason, right? You don't get any feedback. And that just feels like, oh God, I wish
being ghosted.
How could I be this thing? That it is like being ghosted. And that's really hard. But I think, and in the end, we all have to make money and put food on the table and do all those things. And you can't do that unless you eventually get the job as the actor. But I do think that everything that you and I have prepped that I didn't get or that I did get, it's almost like something that I file away and we can remember and call that up on another project in the future. Or it's reminiscent of that one moment that we teased out in that one scene that we can't really remember, but we remember the feeling of it. And if we could get that, it would be, it's almost like you have ingredients for one thing. You didn't end up making the pizza and then you make pasta the next year. You still have the sauce. The sauce is over. The sauce is over there.
I like your attitude. I think you have a very special way of doing self-tapes, and of course everyone does them now, but I think you've been doing them longer than they were cool to do. Mm-hmm. And you would record the other person and then sort of start on your MacBook. What's your way of doing that? So you don't even need a reader because you're the reader. Sometimes
I would often find myself not having access to a reader, or you get in that tricky position where you have a friend who's going to read for you, but you really want to do the scene 15 times until you get it exactly how you want it. And you don't want to feel them to feel put upon, or you get someone to read it with you and they don't really give you the proper emotional cue that you're looking for to go where you want in the scene. So I just kind of designed this way where, and it kind of stemmed from the way in which I learn my dialogue, which is on voice memo. I just record the other person's dialogue, and there are apps for this, but I don't know what the apps are. I think there's apps for this, but I
Yeah.
just record the other person's lines on voice memo, and then I would stop and start because I learn things audio. I'm not a visual learner.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I could just make self tapes that way. I would use kind of GarageBand and record the other dialogue, and then I would just use the space bar and create my own cadence in the scene. And I could do it over as many days as I wanted, or if I had a hankering to do it at 11 o'clock or at night or 9 in the morning, or I just wanted to try it one more time, or I realized I wore the wrong thing. I want to go for a different look, or what if I try it like this? It just gives you so many more options and flexibility. And then I would just look right down the barrel because it's a little aggressive to be looking. But I think that there is something kind of very present about the idea that it's almost like you're reading with the director. There are some
Yeah.
directors that read right with the actors. So it's worked. It's worked pretty well for us in the past. And I've definitely booked some things, and then I've definitely not booked some things that way. But I did a screen test for, I feel like it was Tim Burton, and he really liked my tape. So I was like, oh, it must be cool that I did it that way. But it was it's an odd way of doing things, just like auditioning against yourself, pressing
Yeah.
the space bar. But
Yeah.
I like it. It works for me. It's easy.
Yeah. But you did that early, and now it's like, I mean, one of the things that some of my colleagues are saying is like this time, this virus time,
Mm-hmm.
is when everyone's on Zoom or whatever, is a perfect thing for the actor to practice self-tapes, talking to their computers. But I think you were doing it before most people were doing it. Now it's a kind of a thing.
I've been
Yeah.
doing it since like 2012.
Yeah.
Like I've been doing it a while. I did it for a Sundance movie that I think was the late aughts. I've been doing it a long time, and it's just by virtue of the fact that I've always been kind of self-sufficient and an only child and never really had lots of people around, and I've always done
That's
that. But I
right.
also think that like auditioning in general and the business in general and the way we function is going to be changed and shaped by what we're seeing we are able to accomplish now without being in person. And I think a lot of casting is already moving digitally. And I think
Yeah.
it's just going to continue to go more and more that way. And,
Right.
you and I found our method of working together just by virtue of the fact that I was stuck in LA, live in New York, that's where we met. And we have just kind of always worked digitally, and it's always worked really well. I mean, I love seeing you in person, but I never feel like I can't get there, or like I'm getting less of the experience of working with you just because it's virtual. I never feel that way.
Yeah. That's nice to hear. I think I was nervous the first time, because I just wasn't associating this as the way to do it. And
Mhm.
we had met in person and definitely prepared the um, audition for the pilot of Shameless
Mhm.
in person.
Mhm.
I remember that moment. I remember that day in the basement of the Esper studio, and that's just the best way for me to work. And so when you got the part and you were going to be shooting in LA, and this was the way we're going to do it, and we would do it on every Sunday
Mhm.
for 9 years or 10 years, um, I think I got nervous, but then it just became a thing. And like, I found my way of doing it, and you'd send me the script and I'd read it and I'd circle all these things and make notes to myself, and then you'd be ready to go and we just roll it out. And those moments are in the show,
Oh yeah.
and
And the thing that's so special about you as a coach that I find, because I've worked with other coaches in the past, is that your imagination about the possibilities of what the actors could find in the space on the day is endless. So, of course, we're doing the dialogue work and the emotional preparation the moment before, what the sense memories are, and digging into all that. But you're also giving me suggestions of like prop acting, which I find I love props now. I am the actor who's always looking for props. What can I do? How can I interact with the space physically? And those are things that are direct Terry steals. I mean, you could grab a pot holder in that moment and want to murder the pot holder,
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
be closing something, or keep moving, keep engaging in the space, because people mostly don't just sit and talk.
Right.
Um,
Especially in a
so.
show like Shameless, when it's a family show that happens in a house and
Mhm,
you're in the kitchen, you're in the bathroom,
mhm,
you're coming down the stairs, you're on your phone, you're brushing your hair,
mhm.
you're making breakfast for Liam,
How many
and
times
all
did
the,
I write "stay busy, stay
yeah,
busy, stay
yeah.
busy"?
And then when you do that, the dialogue just kind of takes care of itself in a nice way, sort of like juggling
Mm-hmm.
that you've decided, but then it tumbles out in a way off the cereal falling on the floor, or
Mm-hmm.
making the coffee, or burning your hand or whatever. Yeah, I love all that.
It also gives you an extra thing to be reactive to, even though you're creating it. It becomes like almost like another character in the scene. Your props, and I like it. A lot of actors that I've worked with are like, "Oh God, I can't believe you want to do so much prop acting," but I'm utterly obsessed with it.
I wouldn't even call it prop acting. I just call it doing. I mean,
Yeah.
the foundation of the method that I trained in, and the Meisner technique, is that acting is doing, truthfully, under imaginary circumstances. And we're doing something here on this Skype call. We're sharing stories and listening to each
Mm-hmm.
other. But I could also write a note, and then
Mm-hmm.
the kind of prop, like, if I need some sort of explosion, am I better off with a spatula or with a
Mm-hmm.
sponge?
Mm-hmm.
And just what kinds of doings create what kinds of behavior, um, that you as the artist decide. Because tell me if you agree with this. Most directors, not including you, don't have time to get into the acting. They're focusing on so many other things. They are grateful if the actor has it together and knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, especially in TV, which is moving quite quickly, and in indies. But I also think that a lot of directors aren't trained in acting,
Right? They don't know what they're
so
talking
they don't
about.
really, or even if they're trying to communicate, they're going to communicate sometimes not in the way that an actor can really metabolize and understand.
Like, do it like
So.
Jodie Foster.
Right. Or they'll be
You
like,
know.
be more like blah, blah, blah. Or they'll give you the result, but not
Yes, that's right.
kind of the juice of it. So,
Right.
but I also think another thing that I really love that you do is to use the words, right? The words
Yeah.
are there to help you. And
Yeah.
like you said, it is a spatula or a sponge, right? A spatula has a different connotation than a
Yeah.
sponge, which you can wring or throw.
Yeah.
And I think that it was funny when you said spatula and sponge. I'm so programmed to be thinking about how to use the words that I
Yeah.
was like in
Yeah.
my head as you were saying that, I was like sponge,
Yeah. Yeah.
spatula. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
thinking about even like how hard the consonants of spatula is, and how
Yes.
sponge is much
Yes.
softer, but it's got a
Yes.
nasal. I don't know. So
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think there's real beauty in the words, even if they're not the greatest words in the world.
Okay.
And how to use those words to our advantage, and
Yeah.
what saying a word a certain way, um, the depth that adds.
Yeah. And what a blessing it is when you get a great script. You know,
Yeah.
I think you got really lucky with the writers for Angeline. I mean, it went through a lot of, and people don't are going to have to wait till that comes out, and you're going to have to wait to finish it. We'll talk about that, but um, that's a great script. That's actually 6 scripts, and it's been through God knows how many permutations. But there's not a lot to change at this point, and it
Hmm.
feels really tight. And the plotting and the structure is great, but the language is great, and the voice that they've captured through your understanding of who she is, and um, that's a quality script.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, development of a script, and getting something to the place where you want to put it on its feet and actually roll cameras on it is it's a long process. It's a frustrating process. It's why when you have something that's so good and then it doesn't get made, it's so heartbreaking. But I'm
Yeah.
so lucky with this that it is in process of getting made. But yeah, I think it's really exciting when the characters have a way of speaking that is unique, that is dynamic, even if it's stylized. If you look at like the way Tarantino writes is so stylized, or the way Mamet writes is so stylized, or I think that there's something good about something that makes it easier to act and more fun and more kind of juicy to act when the character is written specifically and not
Yeah.
just general.
So talk about, because there's something I say to my students sometimes, that everything created started with a thought.
Mm-hmm.
I have an iPhone. That started with
Mm-hmm.
some guy thinking, or some woman thinking, I wonder what it'd be like to put my telephone in this,
Mm-hmm.
right? And with enough dreams and enough action, things happen. And
Mm-hmm.
so, from my understanding, you read an article in the Hollywood Reporter and knew who Angeline was anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and then just kind of went, let's get the rights. I want to tell that story. That's a
Mm-hmm.
very short version of the beginning of that. But was anyone else bidding for the rights for that story?
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a story, and it was a bidding war between. There were quite a few people, different actors, and also companies that were interested in it. Um, and yeah, I had known who Angeline was because I came out to audition for pilot season when I was 13 in LA. And I remember seeing her billboards and being like, wow, who is that? Like, what is that? Wow, that's just wow.
Right.
Um,
So how
and
did that
then,
happen? How did you make it happen? How did you get it? And how did you, because I know what a long journey it was, step by step by step, but it actually ultimately became a multi-million dollar project for NBC Universal, and all this stuff that came out of an idea and conversations and actions and actions and actions. Like, I think it's very inspiring. And
I think, if you're asking what the kernel of the thought was,
also the belief in yourself that you can make it happen, because there was a lot of work to get this off the ground.
yeah, and there's been a lot of tears and, emotional trials to get something made like this, especially at this level of a budget. Um, I think the initial thought for me when I read the article was there was something that I was inherently drawn to about the story. It was very instinctual. There wasn't a lot of thought put into the why. I just knew that there was some emotional connection I had to this material, and an emotional connection that I had to this woman, this story. And I thought, I honestly, I think I proceed with everything totally convinced that it's going to happen, and also totally convinced it's not going to happen. I don't know how to explain like how my brain works that
Yeah.
way, but I just thought, I didn't even think, what would it take to play this? I mean, initially when I called my agents and my lawyers, I said, there's this article and I want to option this. And people were kind of scratching their heads like, huh? You want to play that woman? You don't look anything like that woman. You're not physically built anything like that woman. You're certainly not 70 years old. And I guess I always thought, oh, well, those are next week's problems. Let me
Yeah.
just go and get this, and then I'll figure it out. And then I thought,
Yeah.
I have Terry, I have dialect coaches, I have other things. There are people that do prosthetics. And if I can push this hard enough, that I can make this great enough, if I get to the point where I get to act it, well, I have no idea how I'm going to do that. This is me 3 years ago. But I guess I'll burn that bridge when I get to it. Not cross
Right.
that, burn it. So I guess for me, it's always been, and that's kind of what it's been for me as a director too. It's like I'm going to do this. I'm making this decision to do this. And then if I get the opportunity to, well, I'm going to learn every single thing that will make me hopefully be able to succeed in order to do this. And I'm going to surround myself with a team that will help me, because no one created the iPhone by themselves. No one and by the way,
Right.
my work is not as revolutionary as the iPhone. Let's just say that. I think that like nothing great is created in a vacuum by yourself, and it took so many writers and lawyers and people to help me, you know, obtain the rights. And I called Universal, that I knew, and asked them if they were interested in the story, and they were, and they bid on it, on my behalf, and we ended up getting it, and ended up hiring a writer, and selling it to a network and developing it there. And ultimately that network didn't want to make it, so they kind of gave it back to me. And then I thought the project was going to go away, and then it kind of took another shape, and we ended up, at NBC Universal at Peacock, and it turns out they were the best home for it. They understood the project and believed in it, and in our writers, and found a director, and it really, every step has been a hurdle. And I'm just like the little engine. And there's not to say that there aren't times that felt dark when I thought, I don't know if I can pull this off. I
Yeah.
still don't. But we just keep going, and
Right.
you just take it moment by moment, and scene by scene, and just stay present and do your best. And know that there isn't a right or wrong. It's art, right? It's all subjective. Some people are going to love it. Some people are going to think it's the most horrendous thing they've ever seen. And hopefully not, but like, that's okay. Like, I think that for me, it's always been like, if you don't swing big, you can't hit big.
That's right. And so I think that, notwithstanding your generosity and humility about the team, and I have a team that helps me with my stuff, but I also want you to take credit, which I think you are, for the vision and the little engine piece. And that without that quarterback driving it, believing in it, all in on it, making the phone calls, pushing, meeting, fearless, it wouldn't happen. It would have been so easy to fold the tents up, very easy early on, many a time. And I mention that because it's a value that I really love about you and respect in the world and care about, and um, it's the kind of thing I love to see in my students when they're really all in on something. Um, so I think you should take credit, because I'm mentioning this because I want to share some of what we're talking about with my students and with potential students, to say this is a hard business, and there are too many actors, not enough parts, um, and you're competing against
Not enough
people,
great parts.
not enough great parts, and even not enough bad parts,
Yeah.
honestly. Um, and even if you're really good looking, there's probably someone better looking than you. And so the only way
Or you're
to
too good looking, and you don't
maybe,
look like a real person. Like, I know with my husband, Sam, he won't audition anyone that's looks like an actor.
yeah,
If they look like an actor, he won't read you. He just wants real looking people.
yeah. So the only way to really score and to win and to sustain a life in this wonderful art form of telling stories is to be driven, to be all in, to be wanting to be the best you can be, to have thick skin when it comes to rejection and thin skin when the camera's rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a kind of an interesting shift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you embody that. And I think that's why we've been able to, because we've had some arguments,
Oh yeah.
and you're determined and I'm determined, and we both want the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
and which is for your work to be as good as it can be and as truthful as it can be. And sometimes my strong opinion doesn't always line up with your strong opinion, and we find a way to work it through, and compromise sometimes, and listen to each other, and Um,
I
yeah, be
think something
collaborative.
that I think something you said to me a couple months ago was I asked you if you thought that I was too obsessed with creating the character of Angeline in the way that I have become entirely consumed and obsessed by every gesture, every nuance, every cadence, every toe step, every movement, everything. And you
Yeah,
said, no, I think you're the right level of obsessed. To do anything really great, I think you have to be a little bit obsessed. And I think that's why it's so heartbreaking when you craft
yeah,
an audition in the way that you do and don't get it.
yeah,
But I think at the same time, to say that you have to have a thick skin, it's hard as an actor to have a thick skin, right? Because what we do is feelings. What we want is for our feelings to be
yeah.
immediately accessible to us. And so it's hard to shut that off in real life when it comes to the business aspect of it. And I don't. I'm always like on the floor, a puddle if I don't get something or if I get a bad review or something. I really take it to heart. I
Yeah.
read all of it and I read every yucky Twitter comment and I'm just, yuck.
Maybe you
It's
shouldn't.
it's yucky. I know. But I think, there's good things in there too. And to know that, you touch people and move people as well as and are connecting to people and validating their experience and making them feel seen and reflecting that back is it's great too.
Yeah,
So it's hard to have a thick skin, but I think you're right. I mean, to me, it means that to me, I think I always have a thin skin, which is why I think sometimes we argue a little bit because I care so much what you think of my work, even in our sessions, that if you're, when you're scribbling down notes when we're just working a scene, I'm like, oh fuck, oh god, what did I do? Oh god, he hates it. Oh god. Um, but I do think that like for me, it's not about having thick skin, but it's about bouncing back. It's about like
yeah,
taking the evening and prying into my carbohydrates and picking myself up the next day, going for a jog and be like, okay, here's where we're at now. How can I use what I just learned or what I just learned from my feedback or
yeah.
how can I be better next time? How can I be more available, more present or how can I use even the emotional experience of this rejection as part of my arsenal?
That's pretty wise, young lady. Um, so a lot of people um, don't know what to do in this time we're in, and especially if they want to be actors and they don't have a career,
Mm-hmm.
and they share the value that I have, which is that being excellent is the way to go. That if you have a choice between being young and not knowing what you're doing and having talent and putting time into auditions and putting time into training, that the long game says training is better. Um, you know, if you want to work, you don't need to train. You need an Instagram account and they're hiring people based on how many followers they have,
I
and
know.
people who are really good marketers and really pushy and go to the right parties
But
can
they're not
can make a
hiring.
career happen, but it won't really have any quality to it, in my
Okay,
opinion.
sure.
So if you're that person who wants to be good and then has the idea, but what, the training is not happening in person the way it did for the last hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
What about working online? That feels a little weird to me. I've been seeing, based on, of course, our work, but also teaching the last 8 weeks, that actually, and I was the biggest naysayer on online actor training, it's actually amazing. And just the fact that I can see your face so clearly, I can see, I wouldn't be able to see you this clearly in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't be able to see me this clearly because you'd be off to the side or in back. So um, kissing is weird online. Punching, dancing, some of these physical things are a little bit more challenging to live out, but we figured out some ways. But I think it's a great time to train, and I'm wondering what your thoughts about that are. I mean, what else are you going to do? Watch Netflix and wait for things to open up?
I think it's always a good time to train. I don't think you ever stop training. I think the idea that I don't really pay a lot of attention to those who are getting cast not based on the quality or the focus that they're putting on the work because those probably aren't the kinds of jobs that are going to make my heart sing anyway.
Right.
I think for me, it's kind of like that old thing of like, how can you do jazz, right? You need to learn all the rules before you can break them. And I think
Yeah.
that there's no better time than right now, to do it, because you're never going to have the breadth of this moment with with no real stakes, no real pressures. And it's in these moments where you have the most air around you,
Mhm.
that I think you can challenge yourself and make the biggest strides forward.
Because we're not, that's great. We agree because time, we're not on pause. Time is marching on.
Mm-hmm. That's why
Uh,
when people goes, well, life is on pause. No, it's not. It's happening. It's happening right now. This is
yes.
just, and we don't know how long this is going to go on for. Maybe it'll be a couple months. Maybe it'll be until next spring or summer or who knows when. And I think that, for me, you know, I I love to learn. I think the smartest people know what they don't know and ask for help.
Yeah.
And I think that I know I wouldn't have gotten most of the opportunities and progressed as far as I have without your help. I mean, and
Yeah.
I worked with other coaches in the past before, and you and I have a rapport and have a connection, and I trust you. And even if we fight, you're right, we do want the same thing. We want
Yeah.
what we do together to be unique and to be special and to take big swings, and maybe, it doesn't always work, and we leave it all on the field. And I think
Yeah.
that's why and if I look at the other actors that you work with as well, I'm constantly impressed by their work, and I feel lucky to work with you.
I feel lucky
And
to work with you. You're a
thanks.
sweetheart and you work hard and you got a big heart and you're a bit crazy in the best way. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you for all those nice words. What are you doing to stay sane right now? I worked on my garden today. I did a lot of chores and cleaned up and took apart an old garden bench that was rotting and sawed it and tried to make sure I didn't get my hands blown off. And we're getting something new. And we squirted Henry with my son with the hose. We have more. We made soup.
That's awesome.
Um, yeah,
I'm doing some of that.
yeah,
I found my power drill in the garage.
nice.
And I under my sink in the kitchen, it has always just been a disaster of like Brillo pads somewhere in the back corner and
Yeah,
kitchen products. And I actually ordered on Amazon one of those cart things that pull out, and I drilled it in, and it works like magic. So some of that, and I'm reading, and I'm doing crossword puzzles, and I'm
you're
trying
good
to
at the crossword
meditate.
puzzles.
I love the crossword puzzle. I love
Yeah.
solving things.
Do you do
Um,
Saturdays?
I do Saturday and I do Sunday. I love the Sunday puzzle.
Yeah.
And I'm reading, and I'm looking for things to adapt. I read an article. A writer friend of mine read an article and sent it to me, and we really, really liked it. And I called up another one of my friends who's an actor, and we're kind of bidding against somebody on it now. And the person that we're bidding against to get the rights to this article in the New York Times is a very, very well-known filmmaker. So we kind of feel like we're probably not going to get the rights, but the author's kind of been emailing and engaging with us, and it feels like maybe we will. So again, it's one of those things where like you keep hustling, and even if the person that you're up against is a filmmaker that, is that I really respect, and I may not get it, I'm still going to give it my all. And if I don't get it,
It's
I don't get
exciting.
it. Yeah,
So
I'm
that
just
that makes
read.
me.
I love to read the
This is
books
what
on
I
the
hear. Yeah.
bestseller list, and see what's out there.
I mean, that's the thing is that even though projects aren't happening, casting is happening and
Mm-hmm.
writing is happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like your agents aren't just at the beach, right? They're like
No,
working and
they're working from the beach.
working from the beach, but
They're agents.
they're but I mean, from what I hear, I was listening to the chair of A3, which used to be Abrams,
Mm-hmm.
and he's saying like there's going to be such a flood
Mm-hmm.
of work for actors when things
Mm-hmm.
open up
Huge.
because writers are working a lot right now,
Mm-hmm.
and there's it's like the pantry is getting full
Mm-hmm.
of things to do.
I do. I think that. And I think that companies are desperate to make content. And when and if they can make content, they're going to make it and they're going to make a lot of it. There's a
Right.
lot of development going on. And I really do. I consider this time to be what I called seed planting.
Yeah.
And I think right now, if you're, working on your craft and you're getting better and you're honing your skills, when those floodgates open, when you're ready, if you don't want to be trying to get up to speed then. You can be using this time to challenge yourself, to make to hone your craft and to just get better. Be ready.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's coming.
It's so great to talk to you. I want to just look on my notes if there's anything. I listened to the Sam Jones interview, which I'd heard before, and he said that Phantom was your major film debut, but wasn't Mystic River? It's the year before.
Mystic River was a year before, and Day After Tomorrow was a year
Yeah.
before. But
Yeah.
it was that same year as Mystic River.
Yeah.
But it's so funny, that you were talking about agents a second ago. Agents are great. They're agents. I like my agents. I've had a lot of different agents. I really like my agents now, but they're agents. They have a lot of different clients, and they don't always remember your exact set of skills, what you
That's
can
right.
do, what you can't do. And so for me, I've always been kind of that annoying person that is like reading the trades or seeing what else is out there and calling my agent and asking, Mystic River I got because I was like 16 and 17, and I had read the trades, and there was some big Clint Eastwood movie that had just been announced, and it said that, Sean Penn was paying this guy who's racked with grief after his daughter dies. And I remember being like, I bet I'm about the age that could be. And I called my agent, and turns out they were auditioning people that week. And I went in and auditioned. And if I hadn't picked up the phone, I don't know that I would have been on that list. So there is a certain amount of, looking at what's out there, and no one's ever going to be thinking about, I always say to my agent, like, when you wake up in the morning, I want you to think about your family, and then I want you to think about me.
That's right.
But I know that my agent has 20 clients. So at some point he's going to think about me, hopefully during the week, but he may also not put two and two together that that's a role that I would be good for. And so I think it's helpful to know, kind of to read stuff and to know what's going on out there, and to raise your hand for something, and to see if there have been a lot of things I've emailed about that turns out it's a direct offer, or they're already negotiating with somebody, or they're looking for someone diverse or whatever. And I'm just not right for it. And it's not meant to be, but I think if you don't read those things, the same thing happened with Phantom. I read about that in the trades, and they had already been through a first round of auditions, which is why my first audition was the screen test. I kind of, called my agent and was like, hey, I sing. And they were like, you sing? And I was like, oh my God, you guys hired me from a musical when I was 13, different kind of music, but still, yes, I do sing. So I think that, and similar to Angeline, like nobody knows what you're capable of or what you have an immediate draw to except you. So I think there is a lot of not being scared to raise your hand. And I think something that my generation struggles with is this imposter syndrome of like always feeling like we're not good enough, or not supposed to be there, or like got too far without, but like nobody is going to advocate for you if you're not raising your own hand, even
or
if you're not
humility.
sure if you can, or if you're not like, the worst thing that you can do is, okay, you don't get it, or okay, you make a fool of yourself, pick yourself back up and like keep raising your hand. You just have to like keep like, put me in, coach, put me in, put me in.
Give me the ball. Yep.
Yeah.
Love it.